Hi, I'm Dave Annell. Welcome to the third episode of Setting the Record Straight. Thanks to everyone who's watched, liked and commented on the first two videos. I did promise that this wouldn't be all about me moaning about really bad digitisation and attacking the big commercial genealogical websites. And in fulfilment of that promise, I want today to look at one of my favourite aspects of family history research. When I'm researching a family, I always like to investigate the places that the people lived in, and there's nothing more satisfying than tracking down the actual location of their house, especially if the building is still standing today. Here's a case that I was working on last week. I was looking at the family of Moses and Rebecca Levy, who lived at number 5 Mead Street, Westminster from the late 1860s until their deaths in 1891. And we can see them here in the 1881 census. There they are at number 5 Mead Street. And my first step in a case like this is to get to know the area a bit from the census returns themselves. And here we can see that number 5 was occupied by 3 families. Here we have Moses, Levy and Rebecca down here. We've got William Phillips up here as a bootmaker, who's also got a number of lodgers living with them, and if we go to the page before, we can see that Jane Griffin, a needlewoman, is living there as well. And in fact, if we look at all the houses in Mead Street, we can see that they are all multiple occupancy. There's several families living in each house. We can also see, if we go up to the end here, up to number 7, we can see that that's the last house in Mead Street, or at least it's the last house in the part that's covered in this part of the census. We can go right back to the start of Mead Street. It's quite a few pages. You can see sort of occupations. What have we got? We've got a messenger here. We've got a tailor. We've got a clerk, a decorator. So they're occupied by working families. You'll see there's very few servants. There's one down here, but there's really not many servants. So we get an idea of the sort of family that are living here. And if we go right back to the start of Mead Street, number 1, we can see that it's preceded in the returns by Mead's Court. Now, if we actually go right back to the start of Mead's Court, we can see that Mead's Court is preceded by Wardour Street. So we're getting an idea of what part of Westminster they're in here. So my next step is to see if we can find out exactly where Mead Street was, or indeed is. So we'll go to Google Maps. I'm just going to type in Mead Street, and we can see that nothing is coming up for Mead Street. Now, I've actually discovered that what we're looking for is now called Mead Street. So if we click on that, we can see it's in exactly the right area. It's in Soho Street. It's in Soho rather, and it's just to the east of Wardour Street, in between Wardour Street and Dean Street. We can zoom in on it a bit here to see what we're looking at. So there it is, across from Wardour Street to Dean Street. What I want to do now is to see if we can find that on a contemporaneous map, and the best site for that is the National Library of Scotland's website, maps website. And I'm going to go to the Ordnance Survey section, and there are a number of ways of finding what we want, but I'm going to just zoom in because I know the area that I'm looking for. If we zoom right in, we'll come here to Soho. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to select the 25-inch maps from here. And we're lucky, there's a nice one here, 1870 survey, published 1875. So this is just the right period. And if we zoom in, we'll see here's our road. We've actually got it down as the 2 roads, Mead's Court on the west and Mead Street on the east. So that's very much ties in with what we saw on the 1881 census. And if we look closer at Mead Street, we can see that there are in fact 1, 2, 3, 4 houses on the south side and 1, 2, 3 on the north side. And that ties in with the 7 houses that we saw on the 1871 census. So let's go back to Mead Street, and this time what I want to do is to go to the street view. And if we go along the road here, this is Mead Street, we can see there's these houses on the south side. That's the 4 houses there, and over here we have 3 houses on the north side. And if we turn around here, we'll see we are looking straight at number 5. But of course the question is this our number 5, or is it a different house? Has there been some renumbering? There are two clues to look for. First of all, when we looked in the 1881 census, we saw that the houses were numbered consecutively. We had number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, rather than having 2, 4, and 6, and 1, 3, and 5 with odds and evens separately. The other thing to consider is that we've got this complication where the two roads, Meards Court and Meards Street, are now one road, Meards Street. So there's enough evidence there to suspect that there may have been some renumbering. There are a lot of sources we can look at to try to resolve this, but one that I want to show you, and I find this particularly useful, is Horwood's map of London. Now, it's actually much earlier than the period we're dealing with, but the fact that the individual houses are numbered on this map does make it very good, very useful thing to use. I'm actually looking at Faden's 1819 revision of Horwood's map, so it's a little bit closer to our period. And if we zoom in, we can see the area that we're looking for. Now, it actually has the whole road listed here as Meards Court, but if we look a little bit closer at the numbering, we can see that we've got numbers 1 to 8 and then 5, 6, and 7 on the north side, and number 16 down to 9, and then 4 to 1 on the south side. So it's pretty clear that what they've done here, they've just missed the fact that there is actually Meards Court and Meards Street as two separate roads. And we can see, therefore, that the Meards Street section of it has numbers 1 to 4 on the south and numbers 5 to 7 on the north. So that means that the house that we're looking for is actually this one here, number 5, which is now on the north side of the road. So if we go back to Google Maps and we'll spin round and look at the other side, we can see here it's now number 6, but this is the house in which the Levy family lived between the late 1860s up to 1891. So that's just an example of the sort of process I use when I'm trying to identify a particular house, perhaps starting with a census return or an address, perhaps on a birth certificate or a marriage certificate, etc. I want to return to Meards Street in a future episode of Setting the Record Straight. There are a few other points to make, and there are a number of other sources that I want to have a look at. To keep up to date with Setting the Record Straight, please click on the subscribe button on my YouTube channel. Thanks very much for watching.